let's pretend I'm a Wall Street guy. What's the least amount of sleep I can actually get away with?
Like,
it's so funny because people don't realize all of the things that happen for us when we sleep.
I mean, I was talking to companies and they'd be like, how long do you need to do a presentation on sleep? Like 15 minutes? And I was like an hour. And they were like, you can talk about sleep for an hour? It's the only time our body resets physically, psychologically. Once your body is so tuned in and so built into this routine of poor sleep habits, it's very painful and difficult to get out of that.
Let's say people get off in their sleep patterns. At what point does it start to become, it is their stress and anxiety around not sleeping versus the physiology?
A lot of times the more someone knows about sleep, the worse they actually sleep. Nowadays, there's a term called orthosomniac. Mm-hmm. So basically being obsessed with fixing your sleep. Well, so I actually break a big rule that most people do is I actually do have a
Whoa. Hi everyone, I'm Gabby Reece. I'm a retired professional volleyball player and co-founder of XPT Fitness and Laird Superfoods. And on this podcast, we interview experts about the latest in health and fitness so you can maximize performance in all areas of your busy life. And today I'm talking with sleep expert and former Rams running back Todd Anderson. This is a really important topic to me because I'm not a great sleeper. And we all know that getting enough sleep has an immense impact on our health and performance. And what I'm so curious is why is it that an estimated 50 to 70 million Americans suffer from chronic sleep disorders? Sleep deprivation and insomnia are proven to directly lead to things like anxiety, depression, mood swings, and diminished performance. And with so many new trends, I mean, we've got mouth tape and all kinds of sleep trackers. I thought, you know what? It's really time to dig in a little deeper and to bring Todd onto the podcast. His unique experience as a professional athlete and sleep expert makes him the perfect person to shed some light on this complex topic. Welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. Let's go. Todd Anderson, welcome to the podcast, to my house.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's beautiful.
Oh, thanks. I know you, it's always a schlep to get here. I'm so sorry.
I was on the, at least the highway is beautiful, but man, I was sick of that Uber. It was nonstop.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to be smart then and make it worth your time.
Sure it will be.
So how does somebody go from Michigan football, Rams?
Michigan State.
Sorry. Oh, God. I know. I went to Florida State, and I know if anyone says Florida.
Miami.
Yes. No, I get it. How does somebody go from Michigan State to deciding, first of all, what made you decide, okay, I'm going to walk on?
Yeah.
Because that's a hard decision to make. And was your family supportive? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, probably the hardest decision I ever made, but also the most impactful decision of my life. The reason I did it was because I grew up a Michigan State fan. It was like the real life Rudy scenario. My dad went there, grew up going to games, and by the craziest chain of events, I got an opportunity to walk on. Like the coaches contacted me my senior year of high school, and they were like, "We'll have a spot for you to try to walk on." And I was going to go to Division III school. Had not one scholarship, like not even Division II. I was so under the radar, and I made I still have the board. I had a list with my mom. I had pros and cons of going to Division III at Michigan State, and the last thing on there was like, would I regret it? Would I regret not trying? And I kind of have literally asked that question with any decision I made in my life. And if the answer is yes, if you're ever going to second guess something, chances are you should probably do it. Mm-hmm. Because at least if it doesn't go well, at least you can check the box and be like, I tried. The worst feeling is having regret and being like, what if,
Yeah. So I can't help but think like being a walk-on, it's tricky because it's, first of all, there's a lot of personnel, a lot of athletes. So it's not even like you're in a smaller kind of intimate group. There's a lot of guys.
105 guys.
Right. And then you have to have this confidence to be there, but really nobody's supporting you.
Yeah, I felt more on an island than ever before. And I really didn't have the confidence to be there. I feel like I gave myself confidence by doing this stuff off the field. And that's kind of actually how all this came about. But I didn't have confidence. Like I knew I didn't belong there. And the first day I got there, I realized, there's a reason I didn't have a scholarship offer. Like I didn't get missed. Like that was the correct call by these coaches. But, I kind of saw how things worked and realized if I focus my time and effort off the field, make myself stronger, and getting an edge that way, eventually I can get to the point where I want to be.
Was that always something, even in high school, that you were considering your performance, your fitness, your food, your sleep?
I mean, I was obsessed with human performance, and I always was. Like, even in college, I think I was almost more intrigued by our training than the X's and O's, and I knew I thought I wanted to be a strength conditioning coach, like a college strength conditioning coach. So, even as I was going through, I would ask our staff a ton of questions about the whys behind things and just kind of how they plan things out. And I was reading, back then it was like Muscle and Fitness and all that stuff, but I started taking creatine when I was 14. I was super, into that. At that time it was a little risky because I didn't know as much, but I was always into supplements and stuff like that. And I was obsessed with human performance. I just was always intrigued. I think it actually stemmed from insecurity. And a lot of my success has stemmed from that. But I was overweight as a kid. Super insecure about pool party. I would hate the summer because I didn't
take your shirt off.
Yeah, I didn't want to go to pool parties. And the fact that I just started a podcast with my shirt off is, if you told me that 20 years ago,
the last laugh right
yeah,
now.
I know. But I think I just wanted to get in shape, and then it just progressed. It just became an obsession, and so it just kind of fell into place.
Any injuries in college?
Yeah, I've had knee surgeries. I had a chunk of my cartilage on my femur come off, and wasn't fun, but nothing that still affects me. I actually herniated disc 6 weeks ago. That's been
were you lifting?
Podcast, the dumbest thing ever. I've done the dumbest things. I've done rim to rim, runs, lifts, crazy stuff.
Wait, you're doing a podcast?
Doing a podcast, Pursuit of Wellness, and in Austin. Crossed my legs, sat weird, and just felt something weird. Got up, was sore, went to Olympic swimming trials in Indy, and then every day just got worse to worse, where I couldn't even roll over in bed. My wife would have to push me over. So I'm happy to be here because 2 weeks ago I could barely walk.
When you think about sports, I think about this. I often see people go, oh, it's about winning and losing and all these things. But what you realize I think a lot of athletes is it's really just a platform that you start to develop not only yourself with discipline and all of the things, but really where you're going to go next.
For sure.
And you are, for me, a really perfect example of somebody who, yes, maybe football was the vehicle, but ultimately it was about all the other stuff, like you're talking about, the performance component that, has gotten you here. Before we talk about sleep, which I know a lot about, and I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, that's a pretty common answer.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and then we can get into all the reasons. But I think I'd love to know. So after playing in college, what's inside you? You go, I'm not done with football. There was more to express yourself.
Well, so I signed with the Rams.
Yeah,
and I was with them. Yeah, and well, I thought I might get drafted in the late rounds. And that's a dream come true. Honestly, it wasn't. I always tell people it wasn't really a dream come true because that wasn't even in the cards. That wasn't even a dream because that was so beyond the spectrum of reality that I didn't even think about it. But when that started to become a reality my senior year, who's going to pass up that opportunity? But it was also, an awesome opportunity because when you train for the draft, your agent pays for your training. So I also got to go to Naples and train at a facility for 3 weeks, have a chef, or 3 months, have a chef, 3 workouts a day, have some of the best coaches in the world, and learn. I almost treated it as an internship, and I actually ended up going back and working there right after I got done playing.
Besides the coaching, was there anything that really showed up that was so significantly new or kind of revolutionary to you during that 3 months? Was it the food? Was it the off-field training? Was there something where you're like, whoa, I haven't seen stuff like this before?
To be honest, nothing mind-blowing. What's weird about that time is it's such attention to detail on these specific drills. You're not really trained to be a better athlete. You're trained to be good at these drills, which is weird. But I think the nutrition portion was something that I didn't really... It's really hard in college to dial in nutrition, right? It's almost like a convenience thing. And so having, a chef made a huge difference. And so just in 3 months with the progress I made, I couldn't imagine if I had that for 5 years, which they do now. They have unbelievable resources now. Before 5 years ago, the NCAA had really weird rules with meals and stuff. So now it's pretty much a free-for-all. They can bring in whatever they want, which is great for the athletes because they need it.
I am still surprised, though, because I have a lot of friends that are still in professional sports. The organizations really are so behind, I think, on the food component, where, there's like muffins sitting around. You have $30-40 million a year athletes, and you have this food around. I still think that's very interesting.
I think people would be shocked if they saw the lifestyle of most professional athletes.
Yeah.
Like, when you see someone like LeBron who promotes all that stuff, that's an extreme outlier. Now it's starting to become a trend. It's starting to become the cool thing to do. But I would say 80% of professional athletes do not treat their body in that way. There's a lot of, and honestly, the education, they have the resources to be educated, but I think a lot just don't care because they're so good. They're so talented.
It's going
Why
great.
do they need it?
And they look great.
Yeah,
it's going great.
There's not really a reason to care.
Yeah.
More if you're performing. If you're not just naturally into it like I was, it's like, well, no, you don't really make a change without a catalyst to make it, right? So if everything's going great, why would I make a drastic change?
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side of that, though, some of the best athletes I've ever seen are like that, and there is something to the effect of like ignorance is bliss, of just, I'm going to get it done, and all, because I also know people who are so in their head about all that stuff, and everything has to be perfect. And as we know, like, life happens, like on the road as an athlete, you really don't have a lot of control of things sometimes, and so the people who just get it done seem to excel at high levels.
I think that's something really important that you just said about life too, because sometimes, I know people, everything is perfect, the grams, the training, the measurements, the metrics, and there's so much stress around it. And I think that's what's really interesting, to have conversations around, yes, listen, this is the direction we're trying to get to. These are the foods we're trying to eat. These are the habits we're trying to do. And you got to be adaptable. You got to chill out, because the other doesn't work.
I think with what you said about sleep, I see that all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the more someone knows about sleep, the worse they actually sleep.
Yeah.
Because it draws attention. I think sleep more than anything else, that ignorance is bliss philosophy probably applies more there than anything I've seen. Like my wife, for example, she doesn't care at all, doesn't think about it, sleeps better than anyone I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But she does, like, it's never a thought that she's not going to sleep good, or like things have to be a certain way. She's like, why would I ever be concerned about that stuff?
Okay, but does she come from like a good, safe home?
Yeah.
Okay, so
the trauma aside, that could
I have a theory. Like my dog, no one's ever really hurt my dog except maybe one of my daughters plays a little rough with him. And he lays like wide open, can sleep anywhere, isn't phased. And I'm like, oh, this dog isn't on high alert.
Right.
And then he is when he's awake.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you see those people and you go, man, they feel safe.
Yeah.
They feel safe in the world. Is there something to be said for being you? To me, when I did my homework here, and I can relate a little bit, you feel like a late bloomer.
Definitely.
Right? And so what about that has worked in your favor, but you're still navigating?
I mean, I think because of that, I always had a chip on my shoulder, and I think you can leverage that. I think sometimes coaches will try to create that, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. Yeah, I think it started very young, like I was talking about, just feeling like I wasn't in shape, and it just kind of led me to always feel like I was like that walk-on in every aspect of life, not just sports, but even afterwards. Like I always found myself in situations where, I was the last one picked to be in the room, or situations where it was, it was a reach for me to get there. But then you adapt, and I think that getting used to that feeling of like, okay, I'm nervous, I don't have confidence, like walking into Michigan State, but I know if I just hang around, learn, adapt, keep my mind open, eventually I'll be one of the people sitting in here. And that's kind of just been the story all along. It's just not being afraid of that feeling of, I think people think walk on or just like proving yourself. Like you walk in a room, you're like, I'm going to kick ass. I deserve to be here. Like almost like an arrogance, and a lot of times I think people shy away because they have that feeling of insecurity. And that's almost the feeling you want. I think people are lying when they say they walk into that room thinking they're just going to dominate whatever they're walking into. Yeah,
it's almost like you're lying to yourself too.
Yeah, it's masking.
I think the closer emotion of that humility and managing. It's a funny thing with the ego though, right? Because you have to have enough to be there.
Yeah.
And enough that when they blow the whistle and say, hey, get on the field, that you're like, I can do it.
Yeah.
And then the humility part. It's such a funny gear shift.
It's such a hard balance.
Yeah.
And it's I don't think anybody has it fully figured out. But I do think the gradual stepping stones allows you to kind of teeter that balance. It's when you jump way up, the confidence is nowhere near.
Yeah.
So if you can take gradual steps, get yourself in the right positions rather than try to, which is hard to say, try to do something like astronomically difficult, but I think just appreciating that you can't skip steps. I think you can't fast forward steps. There's a reason for everything you go through, and I think that allows you to really create that balance of confidence yet humility.
Yeah, because you get those skills to manage sort of all the things that come your way, especially when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever have all the skills to balance that, but
you just have to have a lot.
You figure it out.
You have to have a lot of stamina.
Yeah.
And believe in what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, that part, I think that's the main thing.
You have a good cause.
Yeah.
You have a good cause. So you finished with the Rams how long ago?
Man, that was like 11 years ago.
Okay. So you started your dream business about a year. Is it about a year?
Yeah, a little over a year ago. Yep.
So what happened in the 10 years? What was going? So you get out and you think, are you okay? Are you excited to be out? Are you like, who am I?
Definitely was like, who am I? But I didn't know it. So at the time, my wife, who was crushing it in swimming. Well, but right when this happened, she got sick during Olympic trials and missed her third Olympics in 2012. So I almost, I would, well, she was missing an Olympics after you were the best swimmer in the world. That's much more difficult than just not making a roster like that. Even though that is, in my world, was huge, that's kind of as bad as it can get in the sports world. It's pretty bad. So I almost went to I'm just trying to help, be there, almost like a, protective, what can I do? And it let me, it's probably a good thing. I kind of put my transition on pause in a way, I think mentally. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of trickled out over about 5 or 6 years. But I went right back into the strength conditioning world. So I went back to the place I trained. Katie lived there too. That's where I actually met her. Yeah. So she was training for 2012. She did her, out of pool stuff with the same facility that I was training in. And that's where we met. Mm-hmm. So we moved back there together after meeting for like 3 months because, I don't know, we were lost. Well, we definitely knew. Yeah. But we were also like, why not? I just got released. She just didn't make the Olympics, and it was the best decision. I haven't looked back since. Best decision. Moved in together, and I became obsessed with strength conditioning. But, a couple of years later, I got to spend about a week with Dr. Jennifer Martin. She's out of UCLA. Mm-hmm. She's one of the best sleep psychologists in the world, and learned a ton. And just kind of became obsessed with learning about sleep because what I realized, so I kind of took that information, did as much research as I could, applied it to sport and business, and kind of tried to be the liaison between an athlete and the science. Because you can tell athletes all you want, but it's a lot different being a college kid and talking about sleep. You can't just tell them why. You kind of have to walk in their shoes and relate to them. So that's kind of what I became really intrigued by, and I realized very quickly, of all the aspects of health and wellness, if you want to impact someone's quality of life, sleep will make the biggest difference. If someone's not sleeping well and all of a sudden you can fix that, they're almost a different person. Right. And that was fulfilling to me because I think if you're going into strength conditioning and performance coaching, you're always motivated by helping people, right? That's usually why you end up there. And just having that big of an impact at a time that no one was talking about it. I mean, I was talking to companies and, they'd be like, how long do you need to do a presentation on sleep? Like 15 minutes. And I was like an hour. And they were like, you can talk about sleep for an hour, which seems silly now. But back then it was like this insane thought. It just kind of unfolded from there. And what about culturally? Because if someone sees you, okay, ex-football player, you're, bigger guy, it's like, it's the bang iron culture. Yeah. And now you're going to come and talk about sleep. Yeah, I still fight. Did you make a bridge with that? No, that bridge is still up. I think it's gradually slowing down. But everyone's like, just like this guy's a meathead, and I have to kind of break through that barrier. Mm-hmm. It takes time, but I think that, but even it even appeals to that, clang iron, like hustle culture, because at the end of the day, even those people, they're still trying to perform at their highest level. So if you want to do that, we can still talk about why sleep should be, the foundation of everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And the hardest people to break through to is really like the hustle culture and the business
VC
executives for sure.
that make just enough zeros that they know something.
Yeah, and they think more is more. They think that the more things I can do, the better it's going to be. Not the better I can do things, the better the outcome's going to be.
Right.
Or the more efficient.
Right. The East Coast guys will bang through it, and the Northern Cal guys will hack it somehow. That's how they'll figure it out.
AI or something.
I'll just inject some light in my vein and I'll go.
So when I was doing the most of the speaking, it was in New York City. Like I spoke at the New York Bar Association, and I want to talk about two different ends of the spectrum. Like I'm talking about, circadian rhythm and all these different things. And, I get a question that's like, so I smoke cigarettes and drink a half a bottle of vodka every night. Like, what do you think I should do? And I was like, I don't even know how to begin answering this question.
Yeah, it's a little deeper.
Yeah, we're working 18 hours a day. I mean, the lawyers, they grind it.
Yeah. So I know you started your business, your dream, and if people are looking for a dream recovery and performance, you have a lot of products because people are asking you about products, whether it was mouth tape and now you have a bunch. You're going to have a nose taping.
That'll be our big
eye mask.
Yep. Pillowcases.
You have all these things, and I love businesses that are created because you needed it, instead of referring people and also maybe not loving all the products. Going, okay, I think I have an idea how to do this better. So let's talk about sleep. I'd like to have some nuts and bolts about sleep, and then I would love to talk about doing a new business, because I think we live in a time now, especially with technology, where more and more people are thinking about the idea of being entrepreneurs.
100%.
And there's nothing better than not having a boss.
Oh, I could never go back.
We say Monday to Monday is the gig.
Definitely.
You're like the sleep deprived guy who talks about sleep. Why we have recovery. It's so funny because people don't realize all of the things that happen for us when we sleep. So maybe we could just kind of get a 30,000 foot view about really what happens in our systems when you sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to look at it, it's hard because I think it's lumped in the recovery bucket a lot, but it's really more of a prep phase. It really does prepare you for the next day. But at the same time, it's the only time our body resets physically, psychologically, our brain, physically, like flushing out our brain. So, you view it as the giant reset. But the problem is when that's not happening, you're only resetting, a fraction of what you're supposed to, and that builds up over time. And that's when you start to see neurodegenerative diseases, all starts. The brain is kind of, I feel like the North Star for sleep issues. But the hard part with that is that buildup, it's exponential, right? When you're underslept, the issues occur when that curve is getting steep, right? The effects, and it starts to get steep very quickly, and it's hard to slow down. And that's the point where people usually recognize that they have an issue instead of early on starting good habits. I don't want to say like something about shortening the curve or eliminating the curve. Reminds me of COVID, but it keeps that curve low.
It's hard to get people to move when there's nothing in sight.
Similar to the athletes we were talking about. If there's not a reason to do it, but the body's pretty resilient for a while, and it will eventually make up. If you have loss of sleep chronically, it's gonna make room, or it's gonna adapt to that in some way, but it's gonna take probably decades for it to show up. And that's what's a little bit scary, is because once your body is so tuned in and so built into this routine of poor sleep habits, it's very painful and difficult to get out of that cycle. And
you mean because of the habitual components? The
habitual, and then it's literally, your brain adapts in a way that you can't just say, I want to sleep 9 hours or 8 hours now. It takes time, effort, diligence. You really have to dedicate yourself. And that's when people turn to a quick fix like medication or different supplements or things to try to basically skip steps.
Force sleep.
Yeah.
I love it. People don't realize, like, your brain actually does rinse
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
basically, during the sleep. I mean, I think people think of the body resting, but they don't realize that it's almost like a cleaning out.
Yeah, we didn't know that till 2019. I think they were able to do like the first live MRI, and we actually saw like that cerebral spinal fluid. Literally, it's a really cool video of it pumping, flushing out all those proteins that build up throughout the day. And if those proteins are the same ones that clump up and cause plaques, that cause communication issues through to different neurons, so you can literally flush. I always say flush your brain. I think people think I'm saying that as like an analogy, but it's literally a flush of fluid.
I learned, because we do all this deep water pool training and jumping, and I have a friend who works in brain health, and he said that it's also having that pressure of the water when you jump.
That makes sense.
On the back, it flushes, and that always makes me feel a little better, because I shared with you that I'm not a great sleeper. I can maybe fall asleep, but I don't stay asleep. And we can get into the different, like, people who can't fall asleep. And so people don't realize, too, a couple bad nights, how quickly it can impact your overall health.
Yeah.
Like 2 nights in a row, let's say, of not sleeping well.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just talk about, and even though you may not see the impact right away, the impact happening to you is pretty immediate.
Yeah, I think people associate the impact with feeling sleepy, and which is something you can kind of tough through, right? If you're sleepy, you're like, I can get through this, stop being a baby, drink some coffee. But the biggest impacts from poor sleep are subconscious. They're like reaction time, emotional intelligence, your ability to communicate, even like your facial expression slightly change. So those happen after just one poor night of sleep. And they accumulate quickly, like they build on each other. It's not just like, these isolated days. I think we think of that because of day and night, it's like isolated, but they're not. It's a gradient. And really our whole life is one timeline. And whatever you're doing through those 24 hours, it's just building on each other, whether it be taking care of yourself or poor habits. So people don't realize how impacted they are, and they're going through their day a lesser version of themselves, especially in the business world. I see this all the time is, leadership is the biggest trendy topic, right? There's so many speakers talking about leadership, but you cannot communicate effectively as a leader when you're underslept. You can be the toughest, most resilient person. It's just not going to happen. And they found this through studies of CEOs where there's a direct correlation between the hours in which a CEO gets and the safety felt by the employees. And trust and safety is the foundation of any team. Yeah. And when you're not sleeping, you're not as consistent in your responses and communication, and people aren't going to trust you because you're more erratic in the way that you're responding. So it's
right. They just think it's, instead of the crazy boss, they don't realize that is part of probably overworking and not sleeping enough.
It's really not him, probably, or her.
Right.
It's just the effects of being underslept. Your emotions don't have, like, that is literally when we regulate our emotions, especially in that REM sleep, which happens those last few hours, which are normally the hours cut off by someone that's underslept. And all of a sudden our emotional regulation is all over the place.
I feel really sorry for my children all of a sudden.
I was going to say something when I knew you had poor sleep when I walked in.
You did?
Kind of. I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're like, Gab. And I was like, what are you looking at? No. I'm just curious if there's any data, let's say from sleep in the 80s or 90s, I'm making it up, before smartphones. Is there any data that we can get our hands on, especially with kids, if how much less maybe they're sleeping than they were? Do we know any of this? Because I'm always curious, and I understand we have opened up communication. People are more open about, hey, I feel anxious. Yeah. All these things, but I'm also curious because
the amount of sleep.
Yeah, because I think anxiety and depression, ADHD, all these things are also contributing factors, our lack of sleep. I'm just wondering if we know how much kids, how less are they sleeping?
It's definitely less. And I mean, I saw one, I think on average it was like 20 minutes. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't like a number that really jumped out. But I would venture to say the quality of sleep, or at least I think the screens are having a big impact on their sleep. And there's some new stuff coming out about screen usage. And it's not what everyone expected. Like with, the blue light glasses, it's very...
Do you wear those?
I do. I like them. I think they're relaxing. But what's wild about some of the new studies coming out is it's actually more about the how invigorated you are by the content. Like what are you excited by the content and super focused on the content rather than the actual light? Because they did some studies in different situations where people were used to having a TV on, for example, and some people find comfort in that if they grew up that way.
Yeah.
And so it actually is more about what you're watching
focus.
rather than the actual light.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in how engaged you are.
Interesting.
Because they're oftentimes, when you think about the psychology of it, if you grew up as a kid having the TV on for some reason, who knows?
Or like
it
you're a
is.
single person who lives by yourself or something.
Yeah, that could be comforting.
Yeah.
So it really is more about the engagement. And when you look at, TikTok, for example, they crush it. They are so good at showing you exactly what you want to see.
Yeah.
And so when I think about kids scrolling, especially, I really see this show up when I go speak to college teams, college football teams. They don't really shut off and go to bed. They scroll on their phone until they fall asleep, which is that's just going to progress into some issues. That's why the sleep mask, sleep mask has been around for a long time, but I'm super passionate about it. Nothing to do with really the light. It does, but that's not why I'm such a big fan of it. It's the routine. It's the psychology of it, especially for younger kids, college kids, because it's almost like putting bumpers on, similar to the mouth tape. It's like, okay, we know having a nighttime routine and shutting down and shutting your brain off and winding down is super impactful. They're really not willing to do it at that point.
Young people.
Right.
Yeah.
Or there's a lot of people, but the mask, it's like a bumper. You cannot look at your phone. You have the mask on.
Yeah.
So you kind of backdoor your way into creating a routine. The same with the mouth tape. It's like, I'm sure you've dealt with people. Breathing is very popular, prevalent, but a big chunk of the population almost shies away from it because it's a little overwhelming, and people have never done it in a way that they feel the impact, so they're not fully bought in. The mouth tape is just a way to basically back in to that routine, make them feel the difference without actually being intentional with their breathing. Mm-hmm. It's allowing them to create this habit and feel the difference without them really committing to it and committing to it intentionally, like in taking time throughout their day.
Yeah, and I do appreciate, though, that you have said also that it couldn't hurt. Let's say you're working at your home office, nobody sees you, you're not on a Zoom call, you don't have to talk on the phone, slap on a mouth tape, because also even that practice
100%.
Of if you're not sprinting, then you should be breathing through your nose, and rather than worrying about like, oh, will I do it, I won't, I think that practice I thought that was a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think it, like I said, it's just a way to remind you. It's like a reminder. That's why I love that. Like we have these little strips, and I'll throw those on every once in a while because it also brings awareness to the fact if you are opening your mouth. I think a lot of times just people aren't aware. There's no attention there. Mm-hmm. I know I'm guilty of this all the time, and it's when you throw something on like that, you realize, oh, like you're actually resisting breathing through your mouth, and it's really easy, quick fix.
And for parents, they don't realize all the myofascial development in the kid's face, the teeth, the health of your teeth. And so how would somebody deal with because kids naturally will do everything correctly until we put them in chairs and do a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have parents that come to you and go, hey, I would like to put it on my 6-year-old, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's a hard conversation just from like a, legal perspective because, so there are some that go around the outside of their mouth that almost, but they don't really create a lot of tension. So it doesn't do a lot from my experience, but we have seen a lot of people use the small strips, which you can easily open your mouth up if there's an issue, but it's actually wild, the studies coming out now linking like autism with like mouth breathing specifically, and just how impactful. You think about if there's a small amount of apnea and deprivation of oxygen in a developmental brain, you play that out over 10, 15 years, that's going to have a huge impact. Yeah. And so there's been a lot of people really looking into that and using products to assist with that. I think a good trend is orthodontics has shifted quite a bit, where the airway and the way that they are almost like designing the mouth to be, not designing, but shifting around. It used to be very aesthetically driven, and they used to bring teeth in. And
right now you want to get everything open and out.
And the airway is, that there's a lot of people who just have physical limitations with breathing through their nose. And so I think a lot of the way that some of the more forward-thinking dentists and orthodontists are thinking is great, because they realize how impactful having a well-functioning airway for a child is.
Yeah.
And so everyone's going in the right direction. I think it's just, right now, like 60% of the population is breathing out of their mouth at night. So
is that, oh, really?
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff, whether it be stresses, physical limitations, psychological, like there's a lot of reasons for it, but it's pretty prevalent.
So I know sometimes excess weight is an issue, breathing. Okay. Yeah. What about pillow and neck and head position? Is there do we know if there's sort of an optimal-ish position?
Yeah. I mean, side sleeping is definitely the most beneficial from an airway breathing perspective. On your back is most likely to collapse your airway and cause snoring. And snoring is actually a nice tool because it's really easy to tell if it's happening, and it's a good little, yes or no. If you snore, get a sleep study. And I really believe that sleep studies should be the new blood work, because similar to blood work, and now we have this train of thought, but 10 years ago we didn't. If you don't have blood work when you're healthy and feeling really great, it's not that useful.
Right. What's your baseline? If you start feeling
crappy and you're like, I'm going to get blood work, well, I'm like, well, everything looks within the norms of society. Well, that could be a big difference from where you're at. So I think with a sleep study, it's like, you can do them at home now. They're cheap. They're easy.
How does that work?
There's just a few sensors that go on your wrist, your chest. You have a pulse ox on your finger, and it can measure any breathing disturbances or apneas throughout the night. And at least you get a baseline. You'll have a few probably, but what happened to me was, mouth taping not saved my life, but it changed my life. I started about 3 years ago, felt so much better.
Recovered and just alert, homeostasis, all of it?
I didn't wake up as much. I woke up I used to wake up, 3, 4, or 5 times a night.
To do what? Just awake? Go to the bathroom?
Maybe go to the bathroom, maybe awake. Yeah, just different stuff. Then I always compare it to when you sleep as a kid. When you sleep as a kid, maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you just feel like you're out, like sleep like a rock.
Yeah, you go down and then before you know it.
And that's how I felt. And I was like, wow, I feel so much better. Not really knowing why. I knew some of the science behind it, but had no idea what an issue it was. And ended up, getting a bunch of different mouth tape, whatever. I'm like, all right, let's see what's going on. So I did a sleep study with the mouth tape, without the mouth tape. And I had moderate sleep apnea. The doc was like, I would recommend CPAP, like the whole deal. Did it without the mouth tape. It was all corrected. My sleep was almost perfect. And so I was like, well, clearly, and that's kind of why I'm so passionate about it, is just like it the quality of my life because of that has been so vastly changed in a positive direction that it's like I just tell everybody, and there's so many people that had the same experiences. The amount of message I get, but it's like until you experience it, you're kind of like, what is going on?
I feel like we're trained, probably not on purpose, but to overlook things that we really can be in charge of that usually don't cost so much, that are part of every day. It's like, oh, that's, it's like breathing with your mouth closed, or learning how to downregulate or upregulate using your breath, or figuring out putting a tiny little piece of tape over your mouth. It's so funny. I feel like we don't give that enough credit and we sort of overlook it. But if I had a machine and I had to breathe in it in the middle of the night, that means something. So it's all that. I find so interesting.
I think especially in the U.S., it's like we want to take massive action and we want to feel an immediate change. And I think subtle things like that, it's almost like compounding interest. In the beginning, you don't really feel a huge difference. Like the first time you do, for example, if you just close your mouth when you're sitting around, if you're not really aware, you probably aren't going to feel a huge difference, right? Like, you might not, but I don't think people give it enough time to really, or enough energy and intentionality, and then enough, data to actually feel a difference. And so, we want the quick fix. That's why I think sleep supplements are just, we intentionally haven't come out with a sleep supplement because I just kind of like the thought process behind it. I'm not against anything sleep oriented. It's just, I would rather have products that are behavior based, because 99% of people, that would be a fix. And a lot of times what they're putting in sleep supplements isn't great because it's sedating. And there's some of the ingredients we don't really even have that much research on, like how it's affecting your sleep cycles. And it's like the quick fix.
Yeah. And I don't know if it ever works. So maybe we could take a couple scenarios, like you're in a perfect world. You're in your house. You're not traveling. You're not doing any of that. And we'll just bolt on some assumptions. you've moved enough, because that's got to be part of it. My husband's always like, yeah, I'll tell you how to sleep, get tired. He'll move himself to, exhaustion.
There is some truth to that. And up until earlier this year, we thought that exercise, like leading close to bedtime, actually was a deterrent. Well, now we found out all exercise is net positive for sleep.
Right.
In different types of exercise, different times affect the sleep cycles, but they're just adapting to what your body needs based on what type of exercise you did.
Right. So that's sort of his way he does it. And we had a sleep specialist once. We do these events, like 2.5 day events.
Yeah.
And the guy came to lecture, and it was Laird and this guy named Kenny Johnson. Kenny Bolt Wrestling is who he is. He's like beyond jacked. Amped. The two of them together. And the sleep specialist gets up, and he's got all these things, and he goes, and if you lay down and you're in bed, you're asleep within 30 seconds, there's a problem. And Laird and Kenny looks at each other and they're like, because literally done. Lay down, boom. Go to bed. I'm in awe of it. But anyway, back to...
Yeah, that's impressive. That's not normal.
No, but these are people who go hard.
Yeah, I guess I've yet to see something that would show that that's a problem.
Yeah. But, well, tell them they were going to take them out back.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So, sleep hygiene, a cool room, no lights. Do you ever lay in bed and look at your iPad?
I would like to say no, but I
yeah, you're human. It's okay.
My phone. Well, so I actually break a big rule that most people do is I actually do have a TV, and me and my wife have been we watch one show every single night we have for 11 years, and it's like our special time.
Yeah.
And I think
guilty pleasure as a couple.
Yeah, and it is associated with like relaxation and winding down, and so with all this stuff, there are certain things in life that outweigh perfect sleep hygiene, and your relationships should always outweigh anything to do health and wellness wise, because that is the most impactful thing for longevity. No matter what study, bucket of health, like relationships by far outweigh anything else. So that's something that's just a non-negotiable. I look forward to it. I actually think if they were able to do long-term studies when people were used to that, I would say it adds to my sleep. I bet it's net positive because of.
But it spins you into this positive state of mind. You're together. I understand it a little bit. Sometimes, like when I have 3 daughters, only one is in the house right now. But somehow when we're all in the house and I know everyone's sort of in their room and good, I get this feeling of everything is right in the world.
My mom says the same thing when we come home for holidays and we're in the basement. She's there's something about having you there.
And so maybe when you and your wife are in bed and hey, the two of you you're together, it's like we in this moment everything is fine.
It's like a bubble.
Yeah.
But that's really, regardless of how you get there, I think what a routine does is allow you to enter that bubble, whatever it may be, right? You have to get your bed to be associated with restfulness. And when people struggle,
what about sexy time?
And that.
Okay.
Those are the two things.
I'm like,
right?
You've only been in a relationship 11 years.
I thought you had a red room.
Huh?
Over the
a red room? Oh, I was like,
that's from 50 Shades of Grey. That's okay.
I didn't see that because I have a real person, so I didn't have to watch that.
You have some research to do.
Is that what? Do you know what that is? Did you watch it? Don't lie, Justin. You saw it.
What
is that?
It's a room.
Is it a sex room?
Yeah.
Yeah, just say it. It's a sex room. I'm an adult. Let's go.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but he also watches. What is it? Hot One or what's the thing?
No, that was Too Hot to Handle.
Oh, Too Hot to Handle. Sorry.
It was like on the Netflix.
50.
I just
the
saw
menu.
the microphone.
Saw the menu. No. Okay. So your bed should be sex and.
Yes,
and sleep, and maybe it should be in the order of sleep and sex because you sleep a lot more.
But I think where the people miss the mark is like those could still be the only things that are happening there, but you could also create a sense of uneasiness if you're sitting there battling with not being able to sleep.
Yeah.
So getting out of that space. So that's always associated with restfulness. If you start to have anxiety and feelings that you're not going to be able to sleep or worrying about sleeping, get out of that space.
Get out.
Because that will then it very quickly is associated with that feeling of anxiety. And we've all been there, not being able to sleep, starting to think about how am I going to feel tomorrow? I have a big day, blah blah blah. It just kind of cascades.
You know who feels like this a lot? New moms.
I believe that
because you get into bed and you're sort of like, what's the point?
Yeah,
I went through that. Especially one of my daughters. So it's an interesting point you're making of keeping that space, the bubble for these actions, and if it's not happening, trying to get out of there.
With new parents, I've recommended, like, if with that situation, if there's times when they know their sleep's going to get disrupted, like let's say they're only going to have 10. No, I mean, I'm saying like
days that end
like
with
10
why?
15 minutes, right? Yeah. But like, if you have the room, having a separate space for like the short, like I'm just going to try to catch a couple minutes, or like I'm listening still, whatever.
Yeah.
And if there's ever times, let's say, where your partner is taking over and handling stuff, and you have like 3 block hours, try to reserve like the bed for that, because still keeping that like sacred space. Because if you're just laying there, kind of like half-assing your sleep and knowing it's going to be disrupted, again, that it starts to be associated with that space. And so if you have the ability to keep those separate, and I know we're trying to have kids right now, and I know there's probably people out there like, you have no idea, but I'm just saying, I understand.
You're giving us ideals. These are
exactly.
things, areas to work towards.
If there's ever a time where you can create that separation in what you think is going to happen, or if there's a time where for sure, probably, I'm going to have some great time to sleep a couple hours. Mm-hmm. Try to create different spaces.
Yeah. And, one thing we did is, as our kids were a little bigger, I mean, listen, in the beginning when you're nursing and your baby's little, let me tell you where my kid was, right next to me.
Yeah.
I'm not getting up and down 75 times in the night. And also, and I know everybody has a million ways they do it. For me personally, that's how I did it. And then when they were older, but they wanted to be there, I used to put what I called the princess bed on the floor, but it wasn't my bed. So
right.
if they needed you or wanted you, I would just go down to that bed.
Yeah, I did that as a kid a lot.
Yeah, and so it wasn't my bed. It was like, hey, I'm doing this wake up thing in your bed. Okay, so cool room, no lights, whatever, kind of bubble. Are you going to bed pretty much the same time?
Yeah, I think if there's one thing that's the most impactful as far as those type of things go, consistency in bedtime and wake time. 7 days a week is, even from like a biometrics perspective, the most impactful thing you can do. When we get out of our routine, more than 30 minutes, we can start to measure in the biometrics like HRV, things, resting heart rate. Every 5 minutes outside of that routine, it's almost predictable how your body's going to be impacted. So that routine over everything else. And that's also the one that people have the hardest time with.
Yeah, and listen, you said it earlier, if it's a Friday night and really special friends are coming over, do that.
And that's the balance that's so hard. I always ask myself the question, is it worth it? Like, am I like going to go and I don't really want to go? Probably not. But if it's people I care about, we're going to have a good time, that should trump that every single time.
Yeah, because it does give you that.
It's hard because I think some of the hardest, people who have to entertain a lot for work and business stuff.
Oh yeah, and there's alcohol and weird food late.
It's like compounding bad things over and over again.
Yeah, I always say you get away with everything, and then at 35, it starts to split.
Well, I'm 35, so
no, you're doing
hold
good.
On tight.
I think you're fine. You're doing good.
We'll see.
It's just you'll start to see, because you can kind of get away with everything, and then the road starts to split a little bit.
I can feel it a lot because I travel quite a bit, and I definitely am less resilient than I used to be, just slightly, just time zones, and I used to not, be fine.
Yeah.
And I can feel a little bit of difference.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's normal, as you age, but, I think 35 is the mark where things start to.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, I mean 35 though. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
You're just getting in the game.
Starting to dip my toe in what you're talking about.
How important is that sort of space between food and when you put your head on the pillow? Is it, do you subscribe to like 3-4 hours and then don't snack and all of that? Like how does that show up?
Yeah, there's definitely good research on that. With growth hormone production, which isn't the end of the world with that. I think in general, giving your time to digest, wind down. The other great thing about timing your food is it's, again, a trigger for your body of what time it is in association to winding down and going to bed. So I think that is really useful, and it becomes even more useful if you are adjusting time zones, because that's a great tool to get onto a new time zone. But the hard part, I think, is with an athlete with this decision is, are you gonna, your energy balance needs, if you're in a caloric deficit, we deal with swimmers in particular. A lot of them have 2-a-days, right? So you have somebody that's tons of calories are being burned, but then their last practice probably gets done at 7. They're done, they get home at 8. you can't not have enough energy.
Yeah.
And so I think it becomes what types of food you're going to use. But I think, caloric needs, as far as an athlete goes, I think they have to take priority. And I think you can get strategic and maybe move some of those around a little bit. But
when you say that, you mean sort of eat right before that last practice? And then
if you can shift a little bit more to the middle of the day. And
as your big meal?
Yeah, and then afterwards, you only have what you need to kind of recover from that practice, as opposed to like,
a full meal.
Having dinner be this massive.
What does that look like then? Foods that would help with in an athletic. For the general population, this is not a license. I still think it's probably better to back off and be done.
Yeah, for sure.
But let's say you're an athlete and you're competing, or you play at night and you come in and you've managed to shift your big meal to the middle. What are foods that would be really supportive, not only for your recovery, but that maybe would be less impactful to your sleep?
You're talking about right after practice?
Or like sometimes guys, I mean, I can imagine how wired they are after a night game.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's crazy? Going back to the
it's
athletes,
like rock
and
stars.
People would be shocked, is like, we used to get like Popeye's chicken like as we left games, which is crazy when you think about like, how much you're putting your body through and just recovering from a game. It's almost like, a
if
battle.
I was a team owner, I would put a few more zeros to that, because I protect my interest. If I'm being ruthless.
But this is the battle, though. If you're the team dietitian,
who's going to eat it? You mean the athletes are asking?
What if they don't eat? Then you're in a bad place too.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's tough.
But is that food? What are they eating?
You have some protein, I think.
Do you though?
What's that? Chicken strips.
Oh, chicken, dirty business.
Well, I'm just saying.
I know. I
think it's like. I am on board 100%, but I think people would be shocked at how difficult it is people to actually have compliance in some of these diets as a professional athlete.
So what about, what are again, perfect world.
In general, I think.
Is it a protein? Is it a good carbohydrate?
The lower glycemic, the less it's going to impact your sleep for the most part. So really getting a good balance of like fat, protein, carbs. Obviously we want some of all of that as an athlete. Healthy fats are great, medium chain triglycerides, coconut oils, for example, ghee, things like that can be great. But really the mixture, like I think for athletes, it oftentimes they'll go for like super carb heavy, or they almost isolate macronutrients a lot of times because of that, just the way like convenient foods are packaged. They're usually like one thing. It's like a bunch of sugar. So really getting the mix of those things and keeping your blood sugar pretty even keeled throughout the evening is a good tactic. I've seen a lot of people that wear like glucose monitors, CGMs, and it seems like it's almost like a ripple effect when you have like a high glycemic, high sugar meal right before bed. And they tend to wake up a lot when the blood sugar spikes go throughout the night. So it kind of goes in waves if you have a high glycemic meal, and then it seems like there's a lot of restlessness when those peak and valley throughout the night. So if you can keep that low, some of those sleep cycles seem to be less impacted.
What about the mind grinders? Like the people who they're solving problems in their sleep. They wake up. I even experienced this at my age where I was
going to say, the way you asked that, it seemed like it was you a little bit.
Well, yeah. Well, and also, as females, I think I put it in quotes, worry more. Just
definitely
natural, and you're plotting and planning, and what about
That's
this
been
kid?
Like shown.
Yeah, we're prone to negative emotion.
And then females also get slightly more REM sleep. Like the more anxiety you have, you tend to get more REM sleep.
Because we wore ourselves out. We're so exhausted.
Well, the REM sleep is more impactful for anxiety. And so the more you have, your body adapts.
It's like, hey.
Right. And if you you have less anxiety and you work out really hard, you'll get more slow wave sleep.
Oh, interesting.
Because, like what you need is what your brain will give you.
Interesting.
But yeah.
So I have a chef that's going to move into my house?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? No, just
yeah, exactly.
I just need somebody who cuts vegetables. That's the only thing. No, I work it out in my sleep. I think I grew up in a way where I say I grew up with one eye open a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then add sports and a lot of travel, and then start adding kids, and you're sort of awake, and then sleep begets sleep, so then you're in these weird patterns. But when people talk to you about there's a difference of not being able to fall asleep, so we can deal with that by these patterns, these rituals, kind of creating the best environment and best bubble. But then when people wake up, I've started to breathe. Well, and it's also I'll say to myself, I wonder if any of what you're doing right now is actually helping and supporting the things that you're worried about or concerned.
Yeah.
Are you actually solving any problems? You're not. So
you just
let it go.
Yeah.
And then breathing. I'll do longer exhales than inhales and try to just really start to downregulate. But do you have any other things that have shown up that are supportive of getting people back to sleep?
I think what you're talking about often leads people to actually utilizing therapy, because
You're saying I need to see a shrink?
maybe.
Okay.
None of that stuff has anything to do with your sleep, right? And
that's a good point.
If you're waking up and you're worried about the same problems over and over again, you should probably talk about that with someone.
Yeah.
You're not doing much use by ruminating about that. And clearly it's causing you to hold a lot of tension, and it's not adding value to your life. And a lot of times that's one of the most impactful things you can do. And then the other thing I'll say to that is, oftentimes that happens when you wake up, because you don't really wake up from worrying. That's impossible, right?
Right.
So what you try to do, parallel to that, is look at, okay, what are all the reasons in which I would wake up? And you try to eliminate as many as possible. And so like little tweaks that people don't really think about can make a big difference. Like, for example, like a memory foam mattress, right? That you can't feel, remember the old commercials with the glass of wine and the bowling ball, that you don't feel your partner. Like your partner's going to wake up 2 or 3 times, you're going to wake up 2 or 3 times. That can be 6 times.
And I lose the
battle
battle on that, just so we know. Like, you know what I mean? Like Laird rumbles more, he makes more noise, he moves around more. I lose that battle. I don't think I impact him so much.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like
he's gone.
Yeah. But so like that, for example, or even with snoring, like something, having someone do a sleep study, mouth tape can be useful. That's another easy tool. A sleep mask, if there's light, for example, hydration. That's probably one of the biggest reasons people wake up. Front loading your hydration can be a huge change, because even if you don't deal with anxiety, let's say, every time you wake up, there's a chance something happens and you can't go back to sleep. Let's just say, even if it's a low chance, there's still a chance, right? And every single time you wake up, that increases the chances exponentially. It's like getting another hand of cards in blackjack.
Right.
More and more chances. So, when you look at this stuff, just trying to go to wake up as minimal as possible. One time even, like you could go to the bathroom and stub your toe and be awake for 4 hours. Because that's happened. So that's why I say that. I broke my toe one time in the middle of the night. But like, you want to really like limit the number of hands you have of not being able to fall back asleep. And so I think combining that with really diving into what you're so worried about and why you're so worried about it. Like, if you do have something from your childhood, there's a lot of stuff you can do and talk about, and there's probably things that you associate with each other that you don't even realize. And going down that path is useful. Yeah,
I have worked on this quite a bit. Now, do you ever have middle-aged ladies that go, I get a hot flash in the middle of the night? And so you got therapy for that, huh?
Well, I use an 8 sleep. The 8 sleep is pretty sick.
Progesterone lady.
Yeah, every female experiences that somewhat, throughout the month. Half and half, because
but do you know, like,
progesterone and estrogen are impacted, but it's a whole different ball game.
My daughters will laugh and they'll be like, because they go out, they have lives, but they go out, and sometimes right when your progesterone drops, it shows you like 130 or 2, and maybe someone's not home yet. So they're like, why are you rage texting me? I'm like, I'm so sorry. You're a victim of my low progesterone,
Yeah, at least you're aware.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, no, I am controlling myself at every turn. You have no idea.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where you're like, is that real? No, it's not. Okay, you're not allowed to bite the hook.
Right.
You can see the hook and feel the hook, but you're not allowed to bite the hook. But for people listening, you have to really be careful of these things, because it's almost like women on their period, where let's say it's a tough one. Sometimes almost stepping back and going, maybe I don't even really feel this way. I'm having a surge right now.
Yeah.
I did hear something interesting, and I'll get back on topic. Lisa Vitti said once, though, if 3 times prior to right before you had your menstrual cycle, you were having the same feelings, like, I got to break up, I got to fire that person. She goes, if it's 3 months, write it down. But she goes, if it's 3 months in a row, that's actually how you feel.
That's a good.
And I was like, that's G, because we cover things. Hormones cover it the other way.
Yeah.
So I thought that was great advice. So sometimes that happens too. You wake up because you get a hot flash.
Yeah, like I said, I use 8 sleep there.
And just keep it cool? Well, Laird has a chili pad and a chili blanket. No, I love the 8 sleep. It's great.
Yeah, that's been awesome, because like me and my wife, we just different temperatures.
You're cold, she's warmer.
Yeah, for sure. And then it can adjust automatically. The other thing with A-Sleep that's cool, it's actually cooling the bed. There's water that runs through it. So when I first got it, I was like, 3 degrees lower, that's not going to do anything. Freezing.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Air is an insulator. It doesn't transfer heat well, right?
Right.
When it's on contact, you can really control your temperature. My mom is dealing with some of the stuff, and that's her Christmas present. Hopefully she doesn't listen to this, but it'll make a huge impact on her sleep and getting her an 8 sleep.
Yeah, no, it does make a difference because heating up. So what about, magnesium and these things? Are there any, and I know, again, you can't make direct suggestions, but for you personally, let's say, would you ever lean on any type of supplement that would be supportive of sleep?
I take magnesium 3 and 8, which is a cool immersion in magnesium. It was designed to cross the blood-brain barrier, so it's pretty impactful. I'll take, theanine or, those are usually the two things, but I'll lean on it sometimes. The Momentous sleep packets are awesome. I take those. I have a partnership with Momentous, but I truly do love their sleep packets because they're simple and it's all stuff that's just been proven to help your natural sleep cycles. They're not like sedative.
Right.
And so I think that's what it's about because, like I said, there's some of the herbal stuff that's put in some of the supplements. I've taken them and it's like very sedating. I'd be curious.
You mean as in the next day you're groggy?
Yeah, and even just how fast you fall asleep. Anything with the sedating power like that usually has an impact on like your REM cycles, like similar to alcohol. Like alcohol, you fall asleep fast, but your REM cycles are all jacked up. Yeah, so I'd be curious to see if some of these like herbs and things are
what about melatonin? I mean, people pop melatonin like it's nobody's business.
Yeah, melatonin's interesting because when you look at it, when they do all this stuff, it only is increasing people's sleep like 1%, people who use it. So it's very minimal. I think people...
you think it's a placebo effect?
Could be. I mean, I think like when you take something you think is going to work. I think most people take the timing of, melatonin gradually increases throughout the evening. People try to take it, hey, I want to go to bed, take it 2 minutes before I get in bed. That's just not even how your natural progression goes. But they've done quite a few studies that came out last year. Andy Galpin was talking about, they look at levels in the morning and they're still like above physiological norms. So still in the morning, they're above what your body would ever naturally produce. And so even though people don't feel super groggy, it's definitely going to have an impact. And so I think anytime, for one, I think when people are really controlling light and winding down, most people can produce melatonin. Rarely do people have issues with that. It's more about the habits and the mindset. And anytime, you're raising a hormone at different cycles and peaks than it normally should, I think that's just not the best way to approach things.
Yeah.
I don't really have, when you look at all the data, there's not much against it. It's just, I think it's more about the idea behind it of like a quick fix. It's just into that supplement category of like, and then you're tied to this thing and then people start taking like crazy doses, like 10 milligrams and stuff. And you're like, you don't really know what you're doing, but you're really walking yourself down this plank to be reliant on something. You're not actually thinking about, you're thinking about it enough to be worried about it, to go out and take this action, but you're probably actually walking yourself down a plank of worrying about it, being reliant on something, and pretty much eliminating your entire nighttime routine because you think that's the reason you're getting to bed.
Right. And people don't understand that scaffolding around you, that routine is really going to be overall the most impactful. Yeah.
And how you're actually thinking about that. Because there's also people who are just, like you said, they're heady and they create a routine, but it's to check the box. Oh, yeah. And that's also not useful. Yeah. It's like you actually need to be relaxed and you need to have peace and enjoy it and wind down, not just say you did.
Do you have any rituals? Again, you have this new business and I know it's going well, but there's always going to be challenges. Yeah. And, we can do a pretty good job of saying, hey, I'll deal with that tomorrow. But do you have any rituals or practices that when you go, man, my brain is really, I'm not letting go of the day. Yeah. Is there anything you do specifically? Or you just, once you enter that bubble with Katie, you're like, hey, you know what, tomorrow?
I will say I am pretty good at that. Like naturally, I don't think I'm someone that's a super high anxiety person. But when there is something, it's rare, but when there's something that I'm stuck on, it's really difficult for me. But the sauna at night, me and Katie together, again, it actually feels like a physical bubble. And we have two. We have one with like a glass front, like a square, and then we have the barrel. Something about the barrel, it just creates this like separation from the world. And I feel like if I do that and then, we usually go right to bed, that's a pretty good wind down. And I kind of forget about stuff. And also, you can't bring your phone in, it overheats, right? So I think that creates a barrier that I don't even and I haven't really thought about it till this second, but I think that creates a barrier that I don't even really look at it after that. I kind of just put it down.
Yeah, you go to bed.
Yeah. So.
Well, it's interesting because I'm sure also if you have these things that are on your mind, it doesn't mean that they're bothering you. They're just on your mind.
Yeah.
That you can also use that time to talk to Katie, and sort of, share it. And I think people don't realize even a hot bath, maybe they don't have a sauna, a really hot bath or something like that really is supportive of your sleep.
We have a hot tub, but same thing, hot bath.
Yeah.
Underrated tool.
Yeah.
As far as like relaxation goes, because sauna has a lot of health benefits, right? But for sleep, it's pretty much just raising your temperature is the main component that you have to worry about. So a bath is just impactful for your sleep.
Right.
And so I think warm water is super relaxing. Something about the water, I don't know what it is, but I actually think the hot tub is more relaxing than the sauna.
Yeah, and it's maybe the pressure also combined.
like almost like weightlessness kind of. But sure. I love it. Yeah, and I think that's a good point because a lot of people, obviously a sauna is a luxury and they're super expensive. Sure. And it's also a luxury to have your house because people use them all the time, but to have it in close proximity to your bed is tough. You usually have to go to a gym.
Right, but if someone also works out at night, this would be, because it may be, even though it doesn't show up as not as helpful, I still think training earlier in the day is probably ultimately better for your sleep. So at least if someone's training at night, maybe if they do have access, they can pop into a sauna and then go home, which would be helpful. So that reminds me that, your sauna practices have created Beat the Heat, your podcast.
Yeah.
So do you always talk about sleep in your podcast?
No, it's kind of, right. It's called Beat the Heat. So it starts at 160. It's 30 minutes max. Starts at 160. Every 5 minutes it goes up 10 degrees, max out at 230. So if you make it, you beat the heat, you win the golden ladle, which is like, it's gold.
Awesome.
And there's 5 questions throughout that kind of like pertain to the guest that they may or may not, they should know, but if they get it wrong, I'll put water on the rocks. And so at the beginning, Jesse Itzler was the first episode we just launched, and I would try to get questions write questions that they would get wrong. After the first one, I was like, I need to write easier questions. I'm not going to make it if they keep missing these questions. But no, we kind of talk about whatever, but honestly, after like 15 minutes, it becomes just talking about how hot it is and like trying to not, pass out essentially.
That's great though.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about like how you get your cameras and your microphones in there.
Yeah.
And it's good though, because it's focused and intimate.
Yeah, no, it's been super fun. It's actually exceeded my expectations of how much I look forward to doing it. Mine is like the last 5 minutes, but it's been cool because it's different. It's like sauna endurance is different than like going and running 30 miles. It's a different mindset. It's like a suffocating feeling. Yeah. And so like when you get people in there that aren't fully used to it, it's just kind of funny to watch the reactions.
Well, there's time. We've been sauning a very long time in this house, but when somebody told me once that a lot of times you'll have kind of the bad bugs in your gut asking you to leave the sauna because maybe there's this process of like you are detoxing certain things.
That makes sense.
So I would get this defiance. I was like, no. I'm not going to have my, bugs in my gut telling me to get out of the sauna.
Yeah.
So I would actually use that. The minute I would get that impulse to be like, I got to get out of here. I would be like, I'm going to wait a little longer. I'm going to win this round. So circadian rhythm, we have a sleep circadian rhythm, but even our microbiome, if I'm not mistaken, has a circadian rhythm. So when people are traveling, some of the practices that we've experimented with is fasting and then trying to match. And you said it earlier, like, hey, if you get to a place and it's dinner time, eat dinner, and that'll help maybe kick you into a better cycle. Is there any other tricks or things that have shown up that is helpful for travel? Because this is This can be the real kicker for people when they're traveling.
This is one of the rare times I have used melatonin to try to trigger that spike at the same time it normally would be in the time zone. But a good rule too is like usually if you're there for more than like 6 days, change time zones. If you're not, try to stay.
Okay.
That's usually what I tell people. It might not be doable, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. And then especially if you're going, west to east, that's by far the most difficult.
It's harder, yeah.
Usually a day per time zone, west to east. East to west, usually you can go 2 time zones per day. So like, for New York to LA, after about a day and a half, you're pretty acclimated.
Yeah. You're just tired early.
Yeah.
And you wake up early, which isn't
is awesome.
bad.
I know. I always like when I come out here, I'm like waking up super early. I'm like, I wish I could just kind of hold on
more
to this
productive.
a little bit. Yeah. You feel like you're kind of ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Also, when you come out here, though, you feel like you have like 80 emails when you wake up because everyone in New York is
already
firing
rolling
stuff off. Yeah. And New York's already early, and everything. So
is there a difference between the amount of sleep typically men and women need, or does it line up as the same?
I feel like this has gotten there's been so many articles about this that women need more sleep lately.
I would think that we would.
It's slightly more.
I would think that we would. It would make sense. It's a complicated system.
Yeah.
Our endocrine system is complicated. So why would we not need more? I know, that's right.
But
that's why we're so interesting.
Yeah.
We're complicated.
Yeah.
Keep you on your toes. I have no problem with that, but I think that sort of recovery, because of all the things that our body, I don't care how much you lift, the things that, the female body has to go through and do
it's a lot.
It's just different.
Yeah, I think so. I think most of the data, it's pretty insignificant, the amount, like 15 minutes.
Okay.
But I'm sure that varies a lot depending on timing. And, there's I think with females, there's just so many variants. It's not like it's just consistent pretty much ever. So
do you think you'll get in trouble for saying that?
No, I don't.
I'm just kidding.
So. I think it's almost like guys almost.
This is a fact.
Guys almost go through the hormonal changes that females do.
Well, daily. We go for a month.
Right.
Ours is a 30-day cycle. Y'all have a 24-hour cycle.
Even though it's a cycle, it's consistent cycle. Where yours is just long, so it's like hard to get a gauge if you're a guy. It's like a lot of what's going on here. So we try to.
And I have 3 daughters.
That is a lot going on.
My husband rubs his head a lot.
No wonder he falls asleep in 30
He goes like
seconds.
this.
Now it all makes sense.
Even he's checking out.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll see all of you tomorrow.
Yeah, 30 seconds out.
All right, people, let's pretend I'm a Wall Street guy. What's the least amount of sleep I can actually get away with?
Oh, man. So, 6 hours.
Whoa.
So, no, that's not my answer.
Okay.
6 hours, less than 1% of the population can function optimally, consistently with 6 hours of sleep.
What's the person who is there? Somebody, is it a genetics? And
some people just are genetictically gifted.
They can hit their brains, everything.
Yeah, they're their deep sleep cycles are efficient and they're able to flush everything. And 7 hours is honestly the bare minimum, which is hard. Every time someone hears that too, they're like, okay, how can I get 7 hours? It's like, wow, that's the minimum. That. I don't think you're understanding what that word means. They just literally immediately that's the goal.
Right.
And so it's kind of wild to me too, because I think sleep, a lot of things in fitness, wellness kind of suck. Eating good is hard. Working out is hard.
Yeah, sure.
They take a lot of willpower. Sleeping is
great.
Awesome, right? So it's like, why does it take it takes more conversations to convince people to sleep more than anything else, and yet it's this one thing that's enjoyable and easy, and I feel like it's pretty generally accepted as something that's enjoyable to do. So but I think 7 is, so what's wild though, 7 is probably the minimum. They just did a couple studies last year. They did one in Japan, one at Harvard, I think, and they looked at optimal sleep amount, which in the sleep world, optimal just means sleeping until your body naturally wakes up.
Okay,
so they brought people, I think the average age was 30, big group. They had them get it.
Did you say in Japan?
They did one in Japan.
Okay.
They did 2 almost identical studies, but 2 different schools.
Okay. You know what made me think about this? Do you know that 30% of Japanese under 30 are virgins?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they're probably sleeping a lot because they're not having sex.
They came out really close, so maybe that's having a big impact.
Sorry.
They were in a lab though, so nobody was.
Oh, yeah, nobody was having sex?
No.
Yeah, but they're not anyway, so maybe they're in good sleep cycles.
Right,
but
well,
anyway.
they came out the same. So
they did?
Pretty close, yeah.
Okay.
So they literally let everyone, they let everyone get acclimated for 4 nights to get used to sleeping in the lab. And then they let everyone sleep up to 14 hours, right? So to see how long everyone slept. And the average was 8 hours and 35 minutes was the optimal amount of sleep.
Wow.
Longer than even previously thought. But what was crazy is almost everybody in the study was getting over 7 hours when they came in to the lab. And the average amount of sleep to get acclimated was 10 hours, meaning everyone was underslept, even sleeping over that 7 hour mark when they first got there. And their body needed time to adjust to actually so they're chronically underslept.
Yeah.
And that's a good rule of thumb too. If you go on vacation or something, you feel really relaxed, and not like if you're drinking a ton, but if you go on vacation and you're able to just sleep, and if you can sleep like 10 hours, that's a pretty good marker that you're chronically undersleeping.
That's interesting. And then what about naps? Do you ever nap? I know they're good for you.
I'm not a good napper. Naps can be great if you're a good napper. That's kind of usually what my opinion is on it, because I don't think it's worth it if it's going to impact your night sleep, because that night sleep, like you said, it literally flushes your body. There's a lot of things that have to happen, and the cycles have to progress in this like orderly fashion. And so if it impacts the night sleep, that's something that's going to cascade into multiple days. So I don't think it's worth it for that. It can be a nice boost, cognitive boost, energy boost if you're good at it. And I think for athletes, it's also useful. I think like college athletes, pro athletes, if they have like 2 bouts of training, a lot of times they can easily do it, and it can be a really useful tool. But yeah. I think for in general, if like you're someone that thinks if I take a nap, I'm not going to be able to fall asleep later, probably better just to push through.
How much do you think it becomes like, let's say people get off in their sleep patterns. At what point does it start to become, it is their stress and anxiety around not sleeping versus the physiology? Like, I'd be interested to know.
Thinking about not being able to sleep. There's
and then being like, I'm not a good sleeper and I can't sleep and I walk the halls and all the stuff that people.
Yeah. With all the sleep talk nowadays, there's a term called orthosomniac, which is essentially like, ortho comes from the Greek word of like fixing. Mm-hmm. So basically being obsessed with fixing your sleep. And that's like become more prevalent because there's all this data. Like now we know, okay, sleep is so important and impacts so many things in the body. Then people start freaking out about it. So I think there's a lot of that right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that like things like, wearables like Whoop or Ring are awesome tools. Not awesome tools though to wake up every single day and see where I'm at. Like you should not let a number from an app dictate how you feel. They're really useful for looking at like the prior month. Did I have big life changes or did I make routine changes, and how did that impact things? Mm-hmm. And that's great from a macro level. I mean, super useful, amazing tool for anybody. But if you're waking up every day stressed about how that data is going to look, or you're waking up, some people literally wake up and be like, oh, I thought I felt great, but my recovery is like,
isn't that amazing?
I'm like, who cares what the recovery is?
That's like farming out where you're a road to your Google Maps. It's like, well, it's a cliff. Well, it says go straight. Yeah. I have to go straight. It says go straight. It's like, are you not seeing how you feel? It's wild.
For athletes, we actually have them turn off any trackers like 3 days prior to competition because,
won't matter anyway.
And even for someone in business, right? Smart. Like let's say you have a big presentation or something. Like I don't care what that number says. Sometimes in life, you just got to get it done, right? Mm-hmm. And there's something to that too. So as much as like, I'm always the guy talking about sleep, and it seems like I'm acting like you shouldn't get up super early and be on the grind. It's like there's also huge upsides to having grit and routine and be able to push through and just having the mindset of like, I take care of myself, but like if I need to get up and get it done in a bad environment, I could do it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get it done no matter what. Yeah. And that's what a good athlete does. And so I don't think there's any reason to have that number on competition day.
Yeah, it'd be like you're in an emergency and you're like, but wait a second. You got to roll.
Like you're joking, but like that's how people actually look at it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, so is it safe to say that kind of the biggest myth is that you don't need a ton of sleep? That somebody somewhere can actually beat the system on sleep. Is that kind of the biggest myth?
The amount of times I've heard I'm good with 6 hours is insane. And you're not. Like you're also like, why are you like risking that? Like let's say you are the one in 200 people that can do it. What's the upside of rolling the dice on that? That's a horrible gamble, because if you're wrong, which you probably are, the long-term outcomes are pretty horrific.
Yeah, and that's the problem with all these delayed outcomes. It's like if I showed you a picture of yourself, with Alzheimer's or, diabetes or anxiety, or your kid gets ADHD, which is they don't really have, they just need to get some rest and get some physical activity. I think people would look at it differently. It does fascinate me how we can have sort of the most fundamental things about being human beings, and we somehow think it doesn't matter. It's like water, love, sleep. And it's like, oh, yeah. They don't give credit to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, So a couple other little things that we were talking about. GHB. I know this is like roughly because it's people know it more as like a party or, but there was some, do we know if there's anything to the validity of GHB helping with sleep?
Everything I've seen, literally, I don't know if there's one substance I've seen that's net positive on sleep cycles.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying THC is definitely out.
THC is weird. So it seems to be useful for like 2 nights. So like if you don't take it and you use it, you have an increase in the amount of sleep in your deep sleep, like your slow wave sleep, like for 1 or 2 nights maybe, but then it goes totally the other direction. And you have like a really reduced amount of REM sleep, and all your cycles are disrupted. So it's kind of weird. It seems like, like a one-off.
Yeah.
It seems like it might help, but net negative for extended use.
Yeah.
Which I think people, again, it's like sedating. So you do fall asleep faster. That's proven. It helps with that. For sure we'll fall asleep faster.
With THC?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you're stoned.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
But like, that sedating effect is often misconstrued with better quality sleep.
Yeah.
And most people asking those questions are like chronic users. So chronically, definitely. And the long-term health outcomes of chronic THC usage, when you look at brain scans, are not good.
Yeah.
So I would steer away.
Okay. And for you personally, because you're very fit.
Yeah.
And you are traveling a ton and promoting your business and doing all kinds of things. How are you getting it done? What does a week look like, whether you're on the road or at home, with movement and food? What are the practices that have supported you?
Well, I'll tell you my normal practices, because literally the last 6 weeks I have done nothing, and it's been the worst thing ever because of my back.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like I couldn't even get down the steps. Like it was nuts.
This is I always say sports. Like people always say, well, after all these years, why do you and Laird still train? I go, as an athlete, I've been injured where you're like, you need assistance off a toilet because a knee is hurt.
Yeah.
I don't need to be reminded that besides my loved ones, your health is
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks. So did you tighten the reins on your food to kind of get through this time?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm someone who just, like I said, I was overweight majority of my childhood, so they can go off the rails fast, and I seem to just crave, I'm always seem to like kind of be wanting more. Like it's always been my entire life I've like been trying to gain weight and put on muscle and get bigger, so it's always a challenge for me to like dial back like my intake. So yeah, I've now I'm just grateful to walk, but I dialed back my calories a ton. But normally we do like a meal delivery, a chef, and it's all pretty healthy, grass-fed proteins and wild-caught fish and stuff like that. So that's pretty much standard. But I'll, go out to dinner and have like normal food on the weekends or whatever. So I would say like the 80% of it's really clean stuff. Normally don't eat breakfast, pretty much fast till like 12 or 1. Before this, I ran, surprisingly, nobody ever believes me because I'm a pretty big guy. I'm like, 245 pounds, but I would run, 6 to 10 miles a day.
Oh, and that's good on your body.
Yeah, but I do slow.
You do?
It's very slow. Sometimes I'll do a walk run. I'll take calls during like my running. I always try to like double up stuff.
So
like I do
zone 2 with spikes?
Yeah, all zone 2.
Okay. You double up. You're one of those.
Well, I try to, if I can do a call and do exercise at the same time, it's like, or if I have a meeting, like I'll always be like, do you want to just do it in the sauna or go for a run, like something like that?
Yeah.
Like it just is efficient, and I feel like you're both just in a better mood and more productive. So honestly, cardio has like been, I used to be all strength training. I was way even bigger than I am now. Like I was big and strong. And, I started running like 2 years ago. Actually, Ken Rideout. We started doing a running program. Yeah. And he's always just like, like run faster. And actually like what's wild
what do you do? Put him in a headlock and just.
Yeah. But I don't know. He'll fight. He'll fight to the death. It doesn't.
Hey, Boston.
He might not beat everybody, but he will take it to the end.
Oh yeah.
But it's crazy. And we had a running coach, Mario Fraioli, and he actually taught me how to run slow. And so like, in sport, I always ran to get tired. Like you do sprints and like, so I'd go like try to run 3 miles and I would run fast and just die, and it was such a horrible experience. And, I actually learned how to run at a really slow pace that I felt like I could go forever.
What does that look like, running slow? Do you even the way you strike your foot on the ground? Like what's different?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. But just literally like going like an 11:30 pace and holding it. And it's definitely a different stride. And that's something I had to work on too. I had such a long stride, from sprinting a lot. And that just seemed more, that'll burn
gas
you out.
you.
Yeah. So kind of relearning that and then just relearning how to be comfortable where it almost felt like I could walk if I needed to. It was so slow.
Yeah, like I could just walk, but
I'm like jogging, but I don't need to. But then building a base on that, and it really allowed me to like not hate running because I hated it for so long. And now it's one of my favorite things. It just clears my head. I'm kind of myself. I love sweating. Like I love the sauna, but just running outside and do
you get over it too? Like, how sometimes, especially like you look the part where this expectation and instead of I'm going to do something that feels good to me versus like I'm around a bunch of runners, everybody's passing me. I look like, am I really running? Am I walking? Where did you go? Because that holds a lot of people back. Yeah. Looking different or, or you were like, listen, I'm a big guy. I don't care.
No, I kind of didn't care about that as long as I could do it. I was always self-conscious about doing it. But once I was able to actually just run and not like die and have to walk, I felt good about it. And then it's also like, I think being a big guy and being able to run 20 miles is kind of cool. It's like, that was my goal. So I was all into powerlifting, whatever. And then I became friends with all these guys who are like triathletes running 100 milers, all this stuff. It was a Jesse Itzler. So I went on this.
Bunch of lunatics.
Oh, I went on this. So Jesse called me. He's like, boys trip. He has a place in Georgia. Sauna, all this stuff. We're just going to do sauna. We got a chef. It's going to be sick. I'm like, awesome. I'm in. So we had like me, Jesse, Chad Wright, who's a Navy SEAL, insane endurance runner. Yeah. Devin Levesque, who bear crawled a marathon. We had Tim Snee, bear crawled.
Is that for real?
Yes, insane.
Did he have something on his hands?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's the most insane thing ever. Tim Snee, who's like the High Rocks world champion for his age. Jimmy DeChico, who Super Coffee, just insane athletes. And me, I was like 280 pounds, like just big, burly, like not. Well,
and
runner.
For people who don't know, Jesse hired David Goggins to live with him for.
Yeah, living with the SEAL. Yeah, that's kind of how David got his start. Like that's how he became known. And so I'm thinking.
And you said yes.
Well, but he told me sauna, hang, whatever.
Chef.
First night, sitting around, and they're like, "You guys want to do a triathlon in the morning just to have fun?" I'm like. So we did the swim. I'm horrible at swimming. We did the bike. Never get on a bike.
Did you clip in? Were you guys clipping in? Okay.
Still. Like 2 trails and stuff. Okay. And then we did a 3-mile run up this hill to finish. And I was the guy like everyone finished and then they came back to help me, which is like they're the best group of guys ever. But like I was like, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah, seriously.
No one wants to be that person. And so like they're trying to be nice, but I remember distinctly I was like, I'm never going to be this person again. And so from that point I was like, I need to be adaptable. I want to be able to jump in and do anything I can. And that kind of started me down the path of running. Linked up with Ken. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew Ken before, but I was like, can you help me? And we started this program, and it's been a huge impact to my life. And it also allows me to like manage my weight a lot better. After football, I gained a lot of weight, and just from kind of being lost, like we were talking about. And running is a way to kind of give me a little more wiggle room, just calorically. And if I am going to go explore a little bit, I don't have to be as perfect as if I was just lifting.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a really important message. I interviewed Lexi Pappas. She's a long distance runner. And I said, what would you say to somebody who's going to just start? Because it is intimidating.
Yeah.
And she said, just kind of run for a minute, walk for a minute, or run for
100%.
10, walk for 10. And I think even what you're saying makes it the invitation of like, you can do it at different paces.
Yeah.
And,
Well, and really, the more we look at it now, like running at a slow pace foundationally for like your output is awesome.
Yeah.
And you end up actually getting faster at some of these, in between distances. And so like, not only is it great to get into it, it's great to continue doing. And, for health and longevity, maxing out your heart rate is, you need to be selective. And so doing that zone 2 stuff is just, if you can find a way to enjoy it, it's probably going to be one of the best things you can do for yourself.
Now, Dream, your business.
Yeah.
You get a certain kind of satisfaction being an athlete and sort of pursuit of excellence, competition, camaraderie, all these things. What are you getting out of this pursuit? So your message is positive, right? You're trying to sell sleep.
Yeah.
I think you could get up every day for that.
For sure.
So you have a big why.
Yeah.
And what is it that you're discovering about yourself and about what you're getting from this process that is surprising you?
Yeah, well, first off, like just the amount of the awesome messages I get, because when people fix their sleep, I mean, their life changes. So that is beyond motivating, and it's really cool. But that was kind of to be expected. That I kind of got some of that with the speaking, and this just added to it. But I think what's been really cool is well, 2 things. One, I really do love like the business side of things, and it's almost like a game in the sense of making these decisions and having these chess pieces and trying to grow things. It's really about getting reach and impacting people. And it's cool because it's like I think it's pretty rare in life, and you guys experience this, that you can do something that makes money but also has such a positive impact. You don't feel like you're just selling something, like trading your soul to sell something.
Yeah.
Like I've no hesitation of like promoting it to as many people as possible, because I know it's like net positive for them. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. And the other thing is, I think it's been cool just to like you really see like who's there for you. People have been beyond supportive, and it's been really cool. And like, you always know your friends and stuff, but you really find out who's willing to go above and beyond, and it's exceeded expectations. It's been humbling for sure.
How do you ask for, mentorship, or like, especially in business, because that's very different? And are there people, friends, family, or someone even publicly that you go, hey, I'm going to ask them?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like my parents are both teachers my whole life, and they were the most amazing parents, and taught me the most important values about just how to be a good person. But in the business world, this is a whole different beast right now. So, I mean, Jesse's been a huge mentor. He's come along, and they're actually going to be partners. We haven't actually announced it yet, but they'll be partners in Dream, him and Sarah. And
I was going to say Sarah could really...
Yeah, they'll both be involved.
I mean, she's a G.
Yeah. And so she's about to announce her new company.
Great.
And but that'll be that he's been there. I mean, I feel like I've met some amazing people in like these different aspects of business. I don't think anyone has everything figured out, but there's people who have like one aspect of business just nailed. Like Jesse is an unbelievable communicator, marketer. Like, he can make any message seem exciting, right?
Yeah.
And Ken is awesome for raising money and the back end stuff. He's so connected and knowledgeable. So I think I've, created a lot of relationships, and, can lean on people and be strategic with like, what I go to people about. But that's been naturally, I feel like one of my biggest flaws is not asking for help. And it's really pushed me there, because there's been times where I really didn't have a choice, because I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
You're talking about raising money and legal stuff. And like, I'm like, I literally couldn't even make up an answer. So, having to reach out. But like I said, it's amazing how willing people are to help when you actually have a real relationship with them.
Yeah. I think in the business that you're in right now, one of the kind of necessary traits is you have to position yourself as, in a specific way, almost like an authority.
Yeah.
And what I sensed is that that's probably something that's tricky for you to sort of, I mean, you have data, and no one's really going to dispute if you dig down. You only have to go down about 1/4 of an inch.
Yes. Well, nowadays you can find anything out.
The importance
very
of
quickly.
sleep.
Yeah.
So what about even, because that keeps a lot of people from sort of going up and saying like, have to be forward facing, I have to be out there, because it is scary for people. And if you're a genuine person, you're like, hey, I'm not saying I know all things about all things. You're saying in this space. How have you kind of tackled that and even honed the skill of
So and this was a huge challenge, and it honestly held me back for longer than I would have liked. Is I spoke on sleep for a long time. I would speak to teams and companies, but I never put it out there in the public really, and on social media and stuff like that. And I remember distinctly, I was at an event with my friend Jenna. We were sitting there at a table, and she was like, she heard me speak, and she was like, I had no idea like you speak like that. You should start doing social media posts. And I was always so nervous because I'm like, I don't have my PhD right now, which is something like I'm going to pursue, but it came down to like, okay, I have a lot of knowledge, and also sleep was still something, it was a couple of years ago, that people didn't know enough about. I'm like, if I'm only trying to help people, I might misquote a study, I might say a wrong number here or there, but if I'm only trying to help people out that stuff that's not going to harm them, I really can't see I can't see a reason not to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I just started, and the response was overwhelmingly positive, like, and it just kind of created momentum. It motivated me to do it more and more. So I think what it comes down to is intention. And I think that, you know, if you're putting the time in to learn about something and you feel like you're really knowledgeable and you can help people, and that's like your only goal, your intention is to help people, not harm them, not steer them in a certain direction, not sell something. Like, you go very rarely hear me even talk about our products. You know, my goal is to educate people into how to create a great lifestyle and focus on sleep. And when they realize a product is helpful, ours is just the best one, and they fall into that. That's my goal. And so I think when you realize you're just trying to help people, and you can, no pun intended, sleep well at night, it becomes relatively easy, but it's scary. Like, putting yourself out there is, especially nowadays, like it is terrifying, and people will shred you apart. And some people are really good at it, and others, you know, you're a little self-conscious and it takes time, but, you know, kind of like the running. I think if you just start, you'll realize it's not that scary, and you know, you end up probably helping somebody and wish you started a lot earlier.
Yeah. And I heard a really important quote. I'm going to botch it a little, but weirdly, Denzel Washington said that nobody who's done more than you is going to criticize you.
100%.
And sometimes, if, like you said, the intention is clean enough, if you're really clear with yourself, why not merge making a living with something that you can get behind?
And if people are you know, talking bad about that, like, you don't really want to be friends with them. You don't want them in your life anyways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're saying sleep's important, big guy.
Yeah. It is hard. Sleep is a pretty safe one. It's like really hard to, but I will get people that push back on like the, like, you know, sometimes people take stuff out of context when I talk about like why you shouldn't get up at 5 a.m. to work out. And my point is, if you're not sleeping enough, you know, but so people will come at me with like how I'm not like a rise and grind, and like, I'm the first person to tell you you need to be disciplined.
Then you just do it, take your shirt off.
Yeah.
So you're married, you're a partner, you've been in a long relationship.
Yeah.
Is there a skill, is there something that you're like, oh, this skill or this technique I'm doing as a partner, I didn't know before and now I do, and it's really helpful?
Oh, man. As a partner, that's a really good question. I would say we also have been together for a long time. You know, we got married when we were 26. We started dating when we were 23. So it's been a long time. I would say the biggest thing is, I think, like kind of what you were talking about is like, is this me talking? There's a lot of things that impact your mood and your frustrations. And I think having the ability to, like, when you're frustrated, like, step back and kind of like shine the light out and have perspective on, like, is this really an issue, or am I just like frustrated and emotional in the moment? And oftentimes that's the case. And so, you know, I think recognizing that real time, I think when I'm younger, like, you just kind of live life in the moment. You don't think, there's no introspective commentary in your head. And I think that's allowed me to really pull back and also see both sides. I think seeing the other person's perspective in life is super useful. I think that's probably a lot of the reason why there's so much conflict in the world right now, is trying to see through others' eyes. And oftentimes, if you know, a psychologist told me this one time. It's like, and it was more directed at walking by someone that was homeless or having a hard time. But like, if you were them, you would be doing the exact same thing. So like, you gotta realize whatever the person is doing across from you, they think they're doing the right thing based on all the experience they had and what they're feeling. Mm-hmm. And so I think it gives you a lot of empathy when you think of it that way. And I think you can relate that to your spouse or significant other. And it allows you to kind of like peel back the layers and figure out what the actual issue is and come up with a solution rather than, just a short-term fix where there's still probably a reason why you're having this conflict and you haven't even talked about it.
Yeah.
That's a long answer.
No, it's a great answer. It's really an important answer. I would agree with that. And I think when you're growing together from a very young age and creating businesses and having career changes, both of you as athletes, those are a lot of different transitions. So I was really curious because it's impressive because not a lot of people can go from such high level athletes and then switch and then start something
it's been
new.
A journey. I think I think the biggest thing has been like, it was always like a ride or die situation. Like there was never, it was never like, oh, that's your, from the get-go, never like that's your girlfriend or fiance or wife where there was like a chance that could ever change. It was always like,
that's your
no
girl.
Matter what, it was ride or die, like, partners like Bonnie and Clyde. So it's like when you take risks, knowing you have something like that, it really eliminates a lot of the fear.
Yeah.
And I think, I honestly do, people struggle to find a partner. Actually, I have a lot of empathy for that because I think there's so, like, if I didn't meet Katie, I wouldn't have done 90% of the stuff I've done since after football. And just having that person that is going to be there no matter what, like, changes your outlook on everything.
Yeah.
So
have someone like that and be someone like that.
Yeah,
is really beautiful. I had a vision of Katie and you in the pool and your physique.
You don't want to see me and Katie in the pool.
Her world champion times.
She's actually like, so for LA, she's gonna train like twice a week and she's gonna qualify for trials.
Great.
Well, I guess it'll be in Indy, but
that's
she's
great.
Pretty casual with it. I'm like, it's pretty cool. You can qualify with just swimming twice a week. But
such a brutal sport.
Oh,
people have no idea. Brutal. One of the most brutal.
I don't know how people do it. I'm a horrible swimmer.
Well, you're not necessarily built for it.
No, but also just like technically, I'm kind of like, I'm so bad that I can't even like I'm just quit really fast because I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, well, maybe you could work on that.
Yeah, well, probably, it's probably a flaw.
No, when you have kids, you'll probably be like, okay, daddy, you'll be right there.
Yeah, well, I could do that, but I'm saying the actual, like, if I had
laps?
50, I'd be in bad shape.
It's okay. You have a job. You're all right.
Kinda. Kinda have a job.
If you had one invitation, so we're paying attention to our breathing, is that if you sort of said, hey, this one or three things is a really good starting point into taking care of good sleep hygiene. Mm-hmm. From all the, you talk to so many people and they're doing a lot of some things that if they just changed one or two, it would make a significant impact.
Yeah.
From your mind, as somebody who talks about this all the time, what keeps showing up?
I think the schedule, it by far. Like, I mean, that having a routine and having not alarms, but having a time in which it's consistently happening every single night takes people the furthest. And then second, I kind of lump all of them together is, and I put it in the phase of like controlling the controllables. All the things we know impact sleep positively that take no effort, that can be prearranged, like the light, like a sleep mask can be useful, or blackout shades, whatever you want to do. Temperature, like any bedroom setup, having the right pillows, all that stuff, just pay attention to that. And then honestly, the third thing, and actually it might trump the first thing, is give yourself a break. And I say that because when someone starts to have sleep problems, they focus so much on it and it only makes it worse.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on it, like I said, create that space and get up and take your mind off it and do something, and don't let it become a pattern, because when you start doing that for weeks and months and years, it is really difficult to get yourself out of that space. And so as soon as you start having issues, start worrying about something, dive into what you're thinking about, worrying about, and get out of that space. Get up, take your mind off it. Don't just beat yourself up, and give yourself a break. And you have a couple bad nights of sleep, It happens. Like I
Yeah.
always say, Michael Jordan went out and had like 10 beers and it'd score 50 points the next day sometimes. It's like, you're going to be fine. You're here. You've had horrible nights of sleep. You probably pulled all-nighters and done crazy stuff. So give yourself a break. Don't stress and move on.
Yeah. Will you remind people all the places they can find you and also where, if they are curious about the products, where they can find them?
Yeah. So, I mean, majority of my stuff's on Instagram, but YouTube, post on Twitter sometimes, not a ton, but dreamrecovery.io. And we just came out with skincare infused mouth tape. So there's collagen, biotin, vitamin D, vitamin B. So it's basically like we get the complaint of not having, a lot of people, like females especially, would have skincare routines, but the tape wouldn't stick very well when you have a bunch of, so it's trying to combine the two things. I brought some for you.
Oh, I love it.
And so that's dreamrecovery.io. But yeah, Instagram's, where I am the most. If anybody has any questions, I try to get to all my messages and respond, and love to help people with stuff, unrelated to business, just as a helping human.
Yeah. Well, Ken Wright said that about you. How generous you are.
Yeah, I'll try to be.
Well, I'm really excited for you, and I wish you not only continued success, but I want to interview you again when your first child arrives.
Yeah. I think we might shoot for twins, so we'll see.
Okay, well, even better. That's going to be such a
it's going to be bad no matter what, right? So let's just
What do you mean
knock
it's
this
no?
out.
No, it just is what it is.
But let's say the negative, right? It's already going to be, there's going to be some tough things. Like, let's just make it really tough.
Parenting?
It's like a sprint.
Tough things?
Instead of like I'm going to have to go through that multiple times. Let's just knock it all out in one bout. 2 kids, twins, that'd be awesome.
I always love the person who doesn't carry the twins.
This is Katie's thought too.
It is? Okay. Well, then you're saying it in the right order.
Well, I don't think
all right,
she's
just one time.
Like I said, she's ignorant of bliss. She probably hasn't
why
fully
not?
thought through the carrying part. To be
I
honest
think
with you.
people far less tough than the two of you have had twins, so you'd be able to make it.
Yeah, I don't know. You never see me with a bad night's sleep. Not very tough when that happens.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So thanks again for joining me and listening to the Gabby Reece Show. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if anything showed up today that you find would be helpful to someone you know, pass it along and make sure to share with us what really resonated and stood out for you in this conversation. Thanks again for joining us. Keep going, and I'll see you next time.